1910, from a seaman's diary.
Oh no, I don't miss life in the city. It's finally behind me, that miserable Vanity Fair. On board a ship, it doesn't matter what you say you are, but how well you do your work. You and your shipmates have to rely on each other. You'll have to stick together. Here at sea, I found the true life.
Vor 100 Jahren gab es keine heißen Duschen, es gab keine
100 years ago, they didn't have hot showers, dry clothes to change into, or 3 hot meals a day. And there was no polite, "Could you please give me a hand with this?" Instead it was, "Grab that rope and be quick about it." Never mind if you had diarrhea, or were busy doing something else. It was a very hard life. The romance described by people nowadays, it probably didn't exist. People may well have felt a romantic thrill their first time up in the masts, as they still do today. But it was a very, very hard life that we can only reconstruct to a certain extent. And even this extent is pretty challenging. For some people, quite enough.
Aber dieses Ansatzweise ist schon hart genug, das langt schon vielen Leuten.
The age of the great sailing ships is long past. Very few of these glorious old ships have survived. One of them is the Norwegian bark Statsraad Lehmkuhl. Her maintenance is very costly. She is financed mainly through tours among the fjords round Bergen and by taking on sailing enthusiasts as trainees for one-week voyages through the North Sea. Joseph Conrad, the Pole who learned English on British sailing ships, wrote in 1906,
Sailing is as utterly gone out of the world as the song of a destroyed wild bird. The taking of a modern steamship has not the same quality of intimacy with nature as does the art of sailing. It is less personal and a more exact calling. It is, in short, less a matter of love. Its effects are measured exactly in time and space. Punctuality is its watchword. It is not an individual temperamental achievement, but merely another step forward upon the way of universal conquest.
Cradled among 7 hills, the Norwegian port city of Bergen lies sheltered from the open sea by islands. It's the home port of the Statsraad Lehmkuhl. The city was founded in 1070. Its favourable geographical position facilitated its development into the centre of the flourishing maritime trade between Norway and the Hanseatic cities to the south. In 1236, the first German merchants arrived from Lübeck. They settled here and were soon in control of almost all of Norway's foreign trade. The city's main export for the Hansa was stockfish, a popular Lenten fare throughout medieval Europe. Bergen's heritage of trade and seafaring is virtually unmatched among Norwegian cities. The Statsraad Lehmkuhl at her quay in Bergen, an impressive ship, the world's oldest and largest 3-masted bark still in service, overall length 321 feet, beam 41 feet, draft 16.5 feet. The regular crew has cabin space on board for 22. The ship can also sleep 150 cadets or trainees. The main mast towers 157 feet into the sky from the waterline, as high as a 16-story building. Because of their huge dimensions and their majestic aura, and because the masts and yards formed crosses visible from afar, the great sailing ships used to be known as sea-going cathedrals. The 22 sails of the Statsraad Lehmkuhl add up to a total area of more than 21,500 square feet, about half as much as a football field.
She's originally built in Germany, north of Bremerhaven, a place called Gesteminde, and was built there in 1914 for the German Schulschiffverein by the gentleman who's behind us here on the middle picture, the Grand Duke of Oldenburg. She had a rather short period under the German flag because of the First World War, of course. And already in 1918 she was taken as a war prize by the English. In 1920, the gentleman on the other side here, Minister Lehmkuhl, that's the name of this vessel today, Statsraad means minister, he had seen the vessel in Newcastle, and he had the Bergen School Ship Association make an offer for the ship, and they got the ship, and she started her first voyage already in 1923.
In 1940, the bark fell into the hands of the German Wehrmacht. She was rechristened Westwärts and used as a munitions depot during the war. After the war, the Bergen School Ship Association reclaimed the Windjammer. In the 1960s, the demand for sailing ships as training facilities fell steadily. Modern vessels were preferred. There were serious thoughts of selling the Statsraad Lehmkuhl to foreign buyers. That was when the shipping entrepreneur Hilmar Rexton stepped into action. He thought it would be a shame to give the ship up, so he just bought her. In the 1970s, Rexton found himself confronted with prohibitive maintenance costs. The Statsraad Lehmkuhl Foundation assumed control of the old bark.
The only goal that this foundation has is to keep this ship sailing as long as possible, and when the day comes that she does stop sailing, to keep her preserved for the future generations.
But things haven't come to that yet. The Statsraad Lehmkuhl may be rather old, but she is in remarkably good condition. The ship has a special place in the heart of Markus Lamp, a seaman and sailmaker from the North German city of Kiel.
Ich hatte eigentlich früher vor, auf der Gorch Fock zu segeln. Das ging allerdings schlecht, weil ich nämlich Kriegsdienstverweigerer bin.
I'd always wanted to sail on the Gorch Fock, but that didn't work out too well because, you see, I'm a conscientious objector, so they didn't seem too eager to have me. So I said, OK, I'll look for another berth. The moment I saw this ship, I knew it right away. There it is, that's my ship. I just knew it. It was completely clear. It was a childhood dream. I'd always seen the Gorch Fock on my 10-mark notes, and the Statsraad came to Kiel, and I knew that I would get on board, somehow.
Wie auch immer.
The dream of sailing on a windjammer comes true on the Statsraad Lehmkuhl. Every year, sailing ship enthusiasts from all over the world sign on as trainees, as paying crew, for a few days of romance and adventure at sea.
Well, when the trainees come on board, the first one they meet is me. I have to check them in and also sort out who goes to what watches. And they, more or less, they can choose if they want to have the blue, red or green watch.
From 8 to 12.
Okay, blue watch.
Blue. Ja.
Blaue.
Blau.
I have to give them hammocks and also make sure that everything is in order in the bannier area and the cafeteria area. So I think that is more or less my job.
Meine meisten Bekannten und auch meine Kinder.
Most of my friends and my children too really tend to think that poor old Mum is a little crazy. I think the only one who understands me at all is my son. who has a feeling for the water and faraway places and things like that. But the others, lots of them just laughed at me. You know, she goes on this old ship, she even has to work, maybe she'll get seasick. It's cold up north, it never stops raining and so on. But mostly they say, the lady is a little crazy.
Meistens hört man, na, die Frau hat einen Tick.
It seems that Inez Silat isn't the only mild case of lunacy willing to exchange a few nights in a comfortable bed at home for 2 hooks and a hammock in cramped, non-private quarters, in search of new and unforgettable experiences. Joseph Conrad, who went to sea over a century ago, wrote on the subject of casting off.
A departure is not what a vain people of landsmen may think, not the ship's going away from her port, but distinctly a ceremony of navigation. A ship may have been at sea for days, but as long as the coast remained in sight, a southern-going ship of yesterday had not, in the sailor's sense, begun the enterprise of a passage. The taking of departure, if not the last sight of land, is perhaps the last professional recognition of the land on the part of a sailor. It is the technical as distinguished from the sentimental goodbye. Henceforth he has done with the coast astern of his ship. It is a matter personal to the man. The seaman takes his departure by means of cross bearings, which fix the place of the first tiny pencil cross on the track chart, where the ship's position at noon shall be marked by just such another tiny pencil cross for every day of her passage. You encompass the earth with one particular spot of it in your eye. If you have sighted it on the expected bearing, then that landfall is good.
After the ship has left the harbour, it's time to set the sails. Crew members have gone aloft to undo the gaskets which hold the sail under the yard.
Take that rope.
The trainees are assigned various tasks. Communication is mostly in a lively mixture of English, Norwegian and German. The foresail, the first of 22 sails, is set. Setting the sails is very hard work. Some of the trainees are already old hands. Others have no experience at all. This means, of course, that there is still a certain lack of coordination among them. After 2 hours of work, the first signs of exhaustion become apparent. With his expert's eye, Marcus inspects the sails. He is satisfied.
Okay, thanks for your help. Well.
Es ist immer sehr abenteuerlich, wenn neue Mitsegler an Bord sind.
You never know what to expect when new trainees are on board, for the simple reason that I can't expect these people ever to have had anything to do with rigging before. And of course, they also don't know what's dangerous on this ship. I just take that into account and tell it to the people and treat them accordingly, which means I take them to the different types of rigging and try to give them elementary explanations, and then I explain the commands. Okay, then we just start. We were pretty successful. After all, we managed to set 10 square sails and 2 staysails, and we didn't make a whole lot of mistakes, and nobody was injured. We hardly ever have injuries, although every now and then a permanent crewman gets hurt because sometimes a rope is slacked too quickly, which means that it's let go too quickly, and sometimes there's a lot of tension on the rope, so if you slip on the belaying pin, it can really hurt. You can lose some skin.
Belegnagel, dann tut das sehr weh, kostet Hornhaut.
The Statsraad Lehmkuhl makes good headway. The atmosphere on board becomes increasingly relaxed.
The day that you bring all the trainees on board, there's about 150 things happening at once. We have our regular work to do, our administration of the vessel, and in addition we have all the trainees coming. They have to be put into place, there are questions, there's a lot that has to be done before we leave the pier. And the first 4 hours after leaving the pier are probably the best parts of any voyage, because you just feel that everything's been disconnected, the phones are gone, the people are gone who are asking you all these questions, and you're making your way out to sea. And obviously after that, once you get out into the open sea and you're lucky enough to have a beautiful breeze and all the sails are up, that's probably the highlight of the whole voyage, of any voyage.
Dead tired, the trainees have climbed into their hammocks. The gentle swell has rocked them into a deep and peaceful sleep.
Good morning, Blue Watch. It's 7 o'clock.
The Blue Watch, on duty mornings and evenings from 8 till 12, is ordered to rise and shine. This is when some of the trainees ask themselves whether it's really necessary to make every dream come true. The crew puts the trainees to work on the various duties of the watch. Every morning the deck is scrubbed to prevent the planks from drying out. All day and night the fire watch passes through the decks. The lookout near the bows scours the horizon for possible dangers, and on the stern the man overboard watch keeps his eyes peeled. Naturally, the helm is also manned around the clock. Joseph Conrad wrote of these routine duties.
It is a great doctor for sore hearts and sore heads too, your ship's routine, which I have seen soothe the most turbulent of spirits. There is health in it, and peace and satisfaction of the accomplished round, for each day of the ship's life seems to close a circle within the wide ring of the sea horizon. It borrows a certain dignity of sameness from the majestic monotony of the sea. He who loves the sea loves also the ship's routine. Nowhere else than upon the sea do the days, weeks and months fall away quicker into the past. They seem to be left astern as easily as the light air bubbles in the swirls of the ship's wake, and vanish into a great silence in which your ship moves on with a sort of magical effect.
The sails are trimmed. They are brought into a position that will convert wind energy into a maximum forward impetus. Bosun Sverre directs the work and passes on the orders. Depending on the direction of the wind, the sails are sometimes trimmed in the form of a fan to have an optimum angle to the wind.
That's good.
Beeindruckend ist natürlich der Aufstieg zu den Segeln. Das ist eine ganz eigene Sache.
Of course, the climb up to the sails is really something. It's very special. For one thing, the view is fantastic from up there, and the wind and the water, it really is great. But you also sense your own limitations when you're hanging up there. You know, there's only the rigging going up at an angle, and all of a sudden you notice that it's just your own hands, your own strength holding you up there. And what you're standing on is just a rope, pretty thin too, and that deck is a long way down. But it's exhilarating to be able to stand there. You've made it. You've been up and down, and you've got that view. You look out over the sea. That's really like a dream.
Okay, now we start furling.
Marcus uses a handmade model to demonstrate how the sails are packed.
The leech, and only the leech, is pulled up to the yard. Pull towards the middle so that it's nice and taut here. Now find the lower bolt rope and pull it up to the yard. Okay, now we've got the sail on the yard and we're hanging with our stomachs forward and we start fishing canvas. Now, maybe I'm a woman, maybe not quite so strong, so I don't just use my hands for packing. I use my whole arm. Keep going again and again until the whole sail is in. The next thing is from one yard end to the other, or only to the middle if we don't have enough people. All ready? 1, 2, roll up. And there it is. A whole giant sail has become a little sausage.
Ich möchte das nicht nur genießen, also ich möchte schon wissen.
I don't just want to have fun. I also want to know how the sails work. I mean, it's fascinating how it's all set up. You look at this ship with a whole bunch of ropes and cords hanging in all directions, and you don't know what they're for. And then you slowly start to get an overall idea of which rope does what and how it works. And it's really great to get to understand it a little and to know that in the past they knew about everything and could do everything.
Und zu wissen, dass sie das früher alle schon gekonnt haben und gewusst haben.
Schön fischen.
Just keep fishing.
Jawohl.
That's it.
The imparted theory is now put into practice.
Okay, now watch. Now you get a kind of a fold. So you take the canvas, this fold, and pull it forward with one arm. You 3 men have already packed much too much.
Ich sehe meine Aufgabe auf diesem Schiff,
When it comes to working with the trainees, I see my job on this ship as communicating an idea of teamwork and creating a team, and I'm successful quite often. A ship like this is a fascinating way to get people to work together and to be considerate to each other.
Aneinander zu wachsen und Rücksicht aufeinander zu nehmen.
Und hey! Ja, super! Absolut gut!
After 4 days at sea, the lookout reports land in sight. The coast of Scotland lies before us. Several dolphins suddenly appear. They make a game of swimming alongside the Statsraad Lehmkuhl and repeatedly crossing just in front of her bow. The pilot comes on board to guide the bark safely into port. For the locals, the ship's arrival is a welcome diversion from daily routine.
You go first to the Caledonian Bar. Cali Bar, very entertaining, very nice decor, beautiful barmaids, everything. Then go up to the Marine Bar, very nice, get a nice meal if you wish. Now you'll walk then along the High Street and you come to the Commercial Bar. Now I've chosen the best hostelries in the town for you. So there you are. End of story. Very nice. Very good.
Early in the morning, while the others are still in their hammocks, many of them sleeping off hangovers, Marcus goes aloft to make repairs. He wants to replace some old rat lines with new ones.
Every one of the old traditions we try to keep alive. We don't want to lose the traditions by finding new names for things, by finding new methods of how to do things. This doesn't mean that we don't experiment. This doesn't mean that we just solely rely on something that's been said 100 years ago. Obviously, even today, we still experiment with a ship like this, and we can buy hundreds and hundreds of books which explain how to sail a ship like this, the rules of what one should and should not do. But still you'll always find something new that you can do, because every ship is different, and not every person who has written these books has sailed every type of ship. So we do try to keep the main line on the traditions. We use all the same expressions, the same routines are used as they were on the school ships, and from there on we just adjust a little bit. We have to, of course, adjust to the modern age. We have modern equipment on board, we have some of the comforts of home on board. And those are the only things that deviate from the real traditional part of the ship.
An meinem Job gefällt mir unglaublich gut, dass ich einerseits traditionelles.
What I really enjoy about my job is that, on the one hand, I learn and use a traditional craft, the craft of a seaman. And on the other, I also really like working with people, basically a real learning by doing teaching method.
Was mir nicht gefällt ist,
what I don't like is that I just can't cheat my way out of modern times. There's no way around it. We're living at the end of the 20th century, and not 200 years ago. I can't just chuck the rest of the world, and that has an effect on my everyday work here. We're simply not mariners circumnavigating the globe 150 years ago. We're here, with schedules and deadlines. The ship has to make money, which means we have to organize fjord tours around Bergen, restaurant tours, so to speak, through beautiful scenery the passengers aren't that interested in, since they come on board to have parties and to dance, stomping around in high heels, which ruin the decks. I don't think that's very good.
Mit hochhackigen Stöckelschuhen uns das Deck kaputt treten. Das kann ich nicht gut finden.
Marcus's method of load testing the new ratlines. With time, a ship develops her own character, and a strong bond develops between the ship and the sailors. Joseph Conrad wrote about this bond.
Your ship wants to be humoured with knowledge. A ship is not a slave. You must make her easy in a seaway. You must never forget that you owe her the fullest share of your thought, of your skill. If you remember that obligation, she will sail for you as long as she is able. She will lay out the heaviest gale that ever made you doubt living long enough to see another sunrise.
A sailing ship draws its power from the soul of the world, the wind. But the wind is often not the blessing, but rather the curse of sailing. Joseph Conrad again.
It was off Cape Horn. We had seen no sun, moon or stars for something like 7 days. The force of the southwest gale had grown heavy, as the entries in my logbook testified. With the ship bowing to enormous flashing seas, the few sails still set stood out as coal-black shapes upon the gloomy blueness of the air. I was a youngster then, and suffering from weariness, cold, and imperfect oilskins which let water in. I craved human companionship and took my place by the side of the boatswain, a man whom I did not like, in a comparatively dry spot. Above our heads, the explosive, booming gusts of wind passed continuously. Just from the need of human companionship, I said, or rather shouted, "Blows very hard, boatswain." His answer was, "Aye. And if it blows only a little harder, the masts and the yards will begin to go. And when things begin to go, it's bad."
Right, this was our 1600 position here. We're just south of the Bergen Bank, south of Frigg oil field. And it's about 107 miles away from the entrance to Korsfjord by Marstein Light, which is where we have set our course for. And the course for that's 060 degrees, and we're steering now 065, so we can head a little bit up in case the wind comes ahead. And our speed now 9.7 knots, that's good. That'll get us there ahead of schedule. So if the wind lightens up, we can continue to sail. So it's pretty good for us. We don't have to use the engine.
One day from Bergen, the Statsraad has to turn about and sail in almost the opposite direction. She goes through a maneuver called wearing, in which her stern is turned through the wind. The sails are used to help turn the ship, the yards are braced with the wind.
So when the wind is about dead amidships, we'll start bracing round.
The captain directs the maneuver. Everything depends on his know-how. First, the yards of the mainmast are braced with the wind. An advantage of wearing is that it can be carried out with a small and relatively inexperienced crew. But by this time, the trainees are already working as an efficient team. Everything goes without a hitch. Now the foremast is also braced.
Trainees, die hier mitsegeln, sind nach so einem Segelturn.
Our trainees are much more relaxed after the voyage than they were before. These people are reminded that there are other things in life besides making money and wasting away in front of the TV.
Und vorm Fernseher zu verschimmeln.
Jag säger tack ska du ha, jag har det så bra. Jag har det bedre än de fleste her til stede. Jeg smiler hver dag, fordi jeg er glad. Det så fint å leve selv om storbena skjeve. Jeg dekker på med lys og røde roser, og venter på at hun skal ringe på.
My dream is to take all the ballast, 630 ton, load it with Scotch whiskey and go to Australia. And with some nice trainees on board, I think then my dream come true.
It's often been discussed whether or not to make a cruise around Cape Horn with this vessel. She's the right type of the vessel. She's very big, she's very long, and she can take very hard weather. So if I had the chance, I would be more than happy to take her around Cape Horn on a round the world cruise, and I think that would be her right element.
Seemannschaft auf alten Schiffen, das Erleben der See selber ist eine ganz faszinierende Sache. Man spürt einerseits
Seafaring on old ships, experiencing the sea itself, is a really fascinating thing. On the one hand, you feel how small and powerless we are, and on the other hand, you have incomparably beautiful experiences. We have nights when it's so clear that we see the stars people on land never get to see, certainly not city people. There's always a certain brightness over cities at night, which is not the case at sea, especially when we're sailing. We only have our sailing lights on, and above us, there's nothing. You hear the creaking of the planks and the rigging, and you look up at the stars, and you're transported to another world. You're just overwhelmed. I am, at least.
Ich bin es zumindest.
We have now come to the end of our voyage, unfortunately. And you have performed very well. You're only 77 trainees out of a possible 150, so you're only half capacity. But the ship has been sailed as though it was full of trainees. So you did a very, very good job. You will each receive a diploma which states that you have been on board during this voyage. It also states what sort of instructions and programs you've been through. And it also gives the distance in nautical miles, the total of 698, 436 under sail. We will start with Frederic Amundsen. Please say hoi. Hoi. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
The new cadets are, of course, proud of their achievements. The oldest participant on this voyage, Ingeborg Schwabe from Hamburg, is celebrating a double triumph. Although the 74-year-old has sailed several times on big sailing ships, this was the first time that she mustered the courage to go up into the rigging. The end of the voyage is drawing near. The sails are taken in, and we will soon be back on land. Although it's hard to say goodbye, everyone is happy to have made a dream come true.
Yeah, that's what I've been wondering all my life. What would I do if I left the ship? I don't really know. I can tell you this much. Whenever I go on vacation, I live very close to the ship in Bergen. And whenever I go on vacation and I see the ship go past my living room window, I think, well, I'm glad it's only for 3 or 4 weeks. So that gives you an idea of how difficult it would be for me to leave this ship at this point. Sometimes I think, well, you've been here quite long, you know, you're not really going to deepen your horizons in the respect of a working knowledge for your career. But on the other hand, I think to myself, well, is that so bad when you can live every day at your workplace as a happy day and enjoy yourself? That must be one of the best things you could ever get. So I basically just take it from year to year and hope that this fantasy continues quite long.